Hey guys, I'm Ben from Connective 3. I'm currently the group head of SEO, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about forecasting for SEO and why it's important. It is a bit of a controversial topic depending on who you speak to. Some people don't believe that it's worthwhile doing. Personally, I do, and today I'm going to talk through a few reasons why you need to do it and who you need to aim those forecasts at and why it's important. So there's two key methods of forecasting for SEO. You've got a bottom-up forecast and a top-down forecast. You can do either, and they both have their own purposes. Effectively, it would very much depend on what type of businesses you're either working in or for, depending on whether you're in-house or an agency. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how those methods differ. A bottom-up forecast generally is what you would most commonly see an agency provide to an in-house brand. All that means is that you take you start off with the sessions data initially, and then you work the sessions data. You take all of the internal metrics such as conversion rate, average transaction value, and then you effectively build into an output, which would be a revenue figure. There's nothing wrong with that method. It's perfectly viable. However, in instances where you can, building a top-down forecast can often be more effective, and it can also help you get more buy-in, either if you're in-house and building it for your kind of managers or directors, or if you're agency side as well. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why. A top-down forecast, you would take your the overall business revenue numbers from the P&L if you can, and you would effectively then look at how each channel forms and how they would play into that number. So obviously, if you had an overall revenue number of say £10 million, dollars, whatever it may be for a business, obviously you would then need to apply your channel splits to that, right? So let's say, as an example, SEO would drive 10% of that overall number. So we would assume that 10% of that number needs to be driven by organic or SEO. You would then take your revenue number and work backwards, and you would eventually come out with sessions as your output versus a bottom-up forecast where you would start with sessions. The reason why a top-down forecast is really effective is because it plays really well into the P&L figures. From experience, from working obviously agency side and for in-house brands, it's a lot easier to get buy-in from stakeholders if they can see in a material way how you can actually contribute to their P&L number. There are a lot of SEOs out there or people that work in digital marketing in general that don't believe forecasting for SEO is worthwhile. I'm just going to touch on that a little bit before I go into kind of who we need to aim these at. But effectively, organic as a channel, you have a lot less control over it versus something like PPC. Obviously with PPC, you spend more, you get more. SEO doesn't really work like that, and therefore it's a little bit unpredictable, especially when you account for things like Google updates as an example. So you could be doing everything perfectly well, but then Google could roll out an update and absolutely stomp you, and you've not done anything wrong. As is the case quite often, Google can make mistakes, and it does, and it can take a while to course correct. So I would say that's a major reason why you see a lot of people sort of against forecasting for organic. All you're trying to do is show key stakeholders within businesses, so ideally your C-suite or your marketing directors or your senior heads of, you're really just trying to put a value on what you believe you can drive from an SEO point of view. And the reason being is because at the end of the day, SEO is an investment. And like all good investments, it does compound over time. So for example, let's say you're spending 10K a month on SEO, and you spend that for 2 or 3 years, you would expect your returns to compound over time and increase and improve. So therefore, your investment of 10K a month, you would eventually begin to see bigger and bigger returns over time. And that's kind of how SEO works. And really, the tough part is getting that initial buy-in, because there is always a lag period of a period of time whereby you are investing and you may not see too much happening. So the forecast really is to get buy-in from your C-suite, as I said, your senior directors. Another really good kind of person to bring in on this if you can. So if you're speaking to your client contacts or your prospects and it's a marketing director, I would always encourage you to try and get in front of the CFO or finance director as well, because at the end of the day, they're the people who are ultimately going to have to sign off on this. And from past experience, again, of working in-house, if you get buy-in from those people in those teams and they understand the investment, they understand what they're going to potentially get off the back of it, then it just makes life a hell of a lot easier for you. Generally, from an SEO point of view, and again, this is probably another reason why people don't really get too much buy-in or have kind of questions around SEO forecasting, is that quite often, and I'm sure people watching this video will have seen this before, whereby you work with an agency and they basically just take your last 12 months Google Analytics data, they just tag 10% on over the year, and there you go, Mr. Client. Now, obviously, that isn't really a great way of doing it because it's very lazy. There's no real logic or thought or process behind it. So the way that we can get a little bit more scientific with it and just make it a little bit more, I guess, suitable or fit for purpose is generally you need a couple of different data sets. So ideally, keyword search volume across your key categories or key services, Google Analytics data, of course, for organic, and then you need data around average transaction value or average lead value, conversion rates, LTV. Then what we need to do is kind of take those figures, and we then need to figure out what proportion of revenue we can drive from a non-brand perspective. So the way that we tend to like to do forecast here is we will do a non-brand forecast and we will add branding afterwards. The reason why we do that is because non-brand is where you get a lot of the value from your SEO partners. So non-brand is effectively any of your core keywords that you're trying to rank for or improve traffic for that isn't related to your brand or your specific brand. So the way that we do that, generally, and this is about as scientific as you can get with it, to be honest, is I would look into Google Search Console. I would have a look at your brand and non-brand split over time, and the period of time can vary depending on how much data you have. You effectively just look at what percentage split of the total clicks, and then you basically apply that to your sessions. Now, it isn't 100% accurate, of course, because clicks and sessions data, it doesn't completely align. But it's better than just doing an overall forecast that's a bit of a mishmash of brand, non-brand, and it's really difficult to track. Generally, when we've applied that non-brand split to the forecast, we'll work the sessions numbers through, ATV, or average transaction value, conversion rate, etc. And then we'll come out with a number. And again, I'm just talking from a bottom-up perspective here to start off with. And then once you've got that, you can then lay your brand traffic back in on top of that and give an overall view. If you're working it from a top-down perspective, you would do pretty much the same thing, except you would work out total sessions, and then you would apply your non-brand to it and kind of work backwards to get your non-brand revenue. So I'm talking here, there's a lot of businesses out there that have invested in this channel before. Maybe it hasn't worked out. Maybe they've not worked with the right partners. Maybe, they've had somebody delivering really, really subpar work, and therefore they're quite hesitant in investing in the channel. One thing that I really like to do is forecast outer years. So you'll do your year one forecast. You'll kind of have a look at what that looks like. And then I would also tend to do a year two, potentially even a year three forecast, depending on the nature of the business. What that can do is it can actually show the trajectory of how organic actually works and SEO works as a channel. So as I mentioned earlier on, it compounds over time. So you can almost reflect that in the year two and year three performance, whereby fees would remain relatively similar. There may be a bit of inflation in there, but actually your returns are going to be a lot higher in the outer years. And sometimes that can help paint that picture that SEO is a longer burn, it is a long-term channel, it is something that you need to invest in for a good amount of time to get a good amount of returns. Now, don't get me wrong, you can invest in SEO, and in some cases you can see results in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It differs by business, but it is really useful to get those outer year forecasts in there just to give a bit more context on the actual potential of the channels. It depends is a very big phrase that we use, and it's no different in this instance, and we kind of have to caveat the forecast, right? Because again, if you're forecasting from a paid point of view, Google gives you all kinds of data and click-through rate performance, et cetera, that you can work with based on performance, or historic performance, should I say. We don't have that from an SEO point of view, so you do have to caveat these forecasts. We don't control Google updates. We don't control your development team, and therefore we don't control any releases that may happen or may occur that will knock something out of place, potentially no index a page, knock something off kilter that really kind of sets you back. And also obviously data can change over time. So search volume for keywords, I know search volume is a paid metric, but it's kind of the best that we have. That can change over time. So search demand may come down on your core keywords. You may still be ranking #1, but actually your search volume has halved. Quite unlikely, but possible. Click-through rates may dip. So I'm sure you've all seen the varying different SERP layouts. So in some particular search results, especially things around like e-commerce or even like hotels or local businesses, et cetera, you can be presented with all sorts of different types of results before you actually get to the organic listings. So you do have to caveat these forecasts, but what I tend to find is as long as your logic holds up and your rationale is solid, and you're kind of giving the best indication of performance based on what you know at that moment in time, generally prospects, clients, etc., are usually quite bought in on it. So you shouldn't have too many issues as long as you kind of make everything clear. Just to wrap this short video up, if you're interested in hearing more about kind of forecasting for SEO, or you have any other SEO related questions, please do feel free to reach out to myself on LinkedIn, or just drop a message through the Connective 3 LinkedIn page, and we will get back to you.